I'm just thrilled for the first time ever to have a Major League Baseball voice and pretty much one of the badasses in the business, Matt Vasgersian, joining the CJ Silas Show. Welcome.
CJ, you only had to call. Just ask. I'm waiting for Real Housewives of New Jersey to start shortly. Like, I got nothing going on right now. The season is yet to begin. Happy to be with you.
Well, I appreciate it. And this is really crazy because I sort of think, and I don't know if you're going to admit this because we are live on ESPN Radio, but I think you've sort of been following me, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm a little older than you, but not much. But we were both at USC. At USC, while we were at USC, we both were on game shows. You were on the new dating game and Supermarket Sweep. I was on Scrabble and Sale of the Century. We're both in the Screen Actors Guild because I dropped out of SC to act for a while before I went back to school and ended up in Syracuse. You were working for the Syracuse Chiefs in 1995 when I broke in as the first woman to be a stadium announcer in professional baseball. I was the Chiefs stadium announcer in 89 and 90. You're following me, I think.
What?
I know.
That's crazy. By the way, you win the game show war because your two shows much more highbrow than the sewer that I was in trying to make a couple of bucks as a dopey college kid. That's amazing. I had no idea we had all that in common.
Isn't that nuts? I knew it, but it's not that always that easy to find people because when I started in the business, there were like 3 sports radio shows, right? We knew Mike and the Mad Dog were the biggest, the first ever on WFAN in New York. And I was in Syracuse at the time, so I used to listen to that. But now there's over 250 radio stations, and then that means they have at least 2 to 10 shows. So there's got to be hundreds of people trying to get you all the time. And finally, one of my girlfriends and I were talking, and she's like, one of my friends knows Matty V. I'm like, you call him Matty V? Like, can I call him Matty V? Like, what? So I'm hoping after this interview, I'll be able to call you Matty V from now on.
You could have done that to start, but if you want to wait until after it's over, that's fine too.
So because today is exactly a year since the sports world stopped, I don't know if you remember that, but it is. And I was on the air when it kind of started happening in the NBA. And we're all going to look back at these days in history, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, the riots at the Capitol, George Floyd being murdered. We're going to look at historic things in our country, and we're going to go, where was I? And I was in the studio when it started going down. By the time I had finished dinner, it was pretty much all over. Where were you when it all went down?
I was on my couch, and I'll remember this vividly, as we all do, per your last statement for sure. And I had a game on. I had ESPN on, and I was looking on my pad trying to do some handicapping for the NCAA tournament that I thought was imminent. I had just kind of digested St. Mary's losing to Gonzaga a night or two before, which bummed me out because I'm a Northern California kid that grew up like loving St. Mary's Galloping Gales basketball, little tiny school of very little regard other than a great, more competitive than it should be basketball program. And yeah, it all stopped. And then we got the news of Rudy Gobert's positive test. And I remember looking at my wife saying, wow, this could be a big deal. This could be a thing. And then the next day, after the Big East decided they'd press on with their tournament, that first game in the tournament went to halftime. And then the officials came out and said, yeah, we're banging it. And then we got into where we were, which was no sports. But yeah, I think we'll all remember that, CJ, where we were when sports stopped.
It was kind of nuts, and I think I was kind of giddy when I started the show today because I feel a little accomplished for us as a collective in this business. Because even though we're not that important to the world, we are because it's entertainment, it's a release, and it's a getaway. But it's not going to be if sports went away, the world would survive. We probably wouldn't. We would probably not for sure. But the fact that we survived it, and I'm thinking about the guys that do shows 5 nights a week every night, or they're sitting on the anchor desk at ESPN and SportsCenter, and how they filled it, and how we did it, and how Major League Baseball did it, and how the NBA did the bubble. It's just actually quite remarkable that we're 365 days later, and we got so much done. And It's been awful. We've had hundreds of thousands of people die in the world. It's the worst thing that'll ever happen in our lifetime. But I feel today hopeful, and I don't know if I ever thought I was going to feel hopeful again. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I was really pessimistic last year over the state of baseball because of the whole confluence of bad things. The pandemic, the fear and loathing around that, and then the hand-wringing between ownership and the Players Association over protocols, over a schedule, over how it's going to look. And I don't think it went perfectly, but the fact that they got on the field for 60 games, added an additional round of playoff games, which was awesome, and then completed a World Series is no small accomplishment. So here we are now in this season, and we were thinking the same thing. We were thinking they're not going to agree on a schedule. There's going to be format problems. Everybody's going to start pre-negotiating next year's collective bargaining agreement wrapped around the fabric of the pandemic, which is a bad way to do business, as we'd all agree. And they're starting on time. And not only are they starting on time, we've got fans, however limited that participation may be. There's fans going to the ballpark on opening day on April 1st. And it's going to kind of feel a little closer to normal. It's not going to be perfectly normal for a while, but it's also not going to be last year with 60 games and cardboard cutouts everywhere. We're getting there. And, without getting into a world history geek thread here, world pandemics are not overnight cures, and 18 months is not an unreasonable amount of time to ask to make sacrifices until we get the world back again. And if we had to sacrifice our sports, it's an easy thing to throw into the fire for the state of our collective health.
No question.
So I'm super optimistic as you are. I'm glad they're playing baseball, and we're talking about that instead of protocols and distancing and masks in the dugout, because that's just normal now.
It is, and it's fine with me. I am kind of glad that the universal DH is not normal. I'm glad that the expanded playoffs are not normal, and I'm really glad we're not going to see runners on second base in extra innings.
Oh no! Are you really?
Yeah, I know, but I'm baseball is, to me, every pitch matters in my world. Baseball's my number one. Besides roller derby, which I play, baseball is my literally. The love for every pitch, win this pitch. It's all about one pitch. And so I don't want to give any of those up, even if it goes to 14.
Well, I get that. I mean, you're in good company with those sentiments. I'll say this, though. I thought that starting with runners on base and extra innings was great. I loved it from the jump because I watched it play out in the World Baseball Classic and its last running, and I watched it throughout the tournament, soup to nuts. I thought it was great. Mm-hmm. I also think that the universal DH is going to come back with next year's collective bargaining agreement. Yeah. So, the halcyon days of the pitcher hitting for himself and double switching in the National League are coming to an end. It didn't get there this year because I think it's pretty obvious that it was kind of a negotiating chip for both sides. And you give me something, I'll give you something, and neither side wanted to give anything. I also liked the expanded playoff format. I think getting more markets involved in September and kind of staving off the momentum that the NFL takes when they, start their exhibition season, that was important. So to have more than just Boston, New York, Chicago, LA involved is a big deal. And that was the biggest accomplishment of the expanded format. Was it perfect having that, wild card round, 2 games? I don't know. It might evolve from that, but I think having more teams in the mix is a good thing. I do. That's probably, of all the things, that's the one that wouldn't bother me if it came back. But I just love when a pitcher gets an RBI. I love when a pitcher comes to the plate and he's not an automatic strikeout or ground out or pop up. I just think pitchers that can hit are awesome, and there aren't many, so that's probably why it's a good thing if the universal DH comes back. He is the voice of Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. He's spent time at the Major League Baseball Network, voice of the Padres, the Brewers. He's covered the Olympics and MLB International. Matt Vasgersian is joining the CJ Silas Show for the first time. Let's talk about some of the big Major League Baseball stories that are happening right now during the spring. One of my favorites is the Trey Mancini story with the Orioles after battling stage 3 colon cancer. I don't know if you saw it, but
The Orioles mic'd him up recently, and they put some of that on Twitter, and it was so great. The joy in this kid's voice and how happy he was, and the fact that his team is around him. That's one of those things in the spring that makes me excited about baseball starting, is when guys can come back and be that story. How much have you followed on that one?
Yeah, I've kind of followed it casually as a fan, along with the rest of baseball fans and Orioles fans for sure. He's one of the good guys in the game to begin with, and to see the smile back on his face and to see him back in camp and ready to play is really great. I mean, every once in a while, those super humanizing stories come along in any sport, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, or in baseball. I mean, we see a lot of them in baseball versus other sports because of the size of the rosters. Football, too. But whether you're talking about a guy like Jamison Tyone, whether it's a guy coming back from testicular cancer, the way Mike Lowell did, who went from, really questioning his mortality to becoming a World Series MVP, those are just such uplifting stories. And they reach people that are suffering too. Those of us that are fortunate enough to have our health, we just don't know the impact that makes on one kid, one fan who, might be struggling with something. And then they see a story like this, and it gets them going again. It picks them up. So I think fans, regardless of their condition, can get into that. And yeah, Trey Mancini story is a really cool way to begin 2021.
How surprised were you when Trevor Bauer signed with the Dodgers, loading up that pitching staff just to make it out of control?
Wow. My relative degree of surprise was small because I just always felt like that guy was going to play a trick on us. And when I say us, the Mets fans who had this sense of entitlement this offseason because of a new owner who was, writing checks like Daddy Warbucks and spending like he wasn't going to be around much longer. And fans loved that. And you go out and you get James McCann and you trade for Lindor and Carrasco, and now they're talking about adding Bauer, and he turncoats to the Dodgers. So I wasn't surprised, knowing a little bit about him. I guess I was surprised in one sense that, and I think this is what you're alluding to, what an embarrassment of riches. I mean, they won a World Series, and David Price didn't even pitch last year. That's unbelievable. And I think A.J. Cassavell, who writes for MLB.com, said it best, and I'll paraphrase his line. He was talking about the Padres loading up and getting Snell and Darvish and really looking like they're in it for the long haul. And his line was, just when the Padres were feeling good about themselves, the Dodgers rolled a $90 million boulder out on I-5 somewhere near Camp Pendleton, and his name was Trevor Bauer.
I love it.
It's really true, too.
Yeah.
Like, the Pods are all feeling real froggy, and here we are. It's going to be great. And Bauer as maybe a number 3 or 4 starter on that staff. It's ridiculous. Nobody's going to be surprised, CJ, if the Dodgers win another World Series. It's that simple.
Yeah, and David Price said this week that he wouldn't mind going in the bullpen. He'll do whatever it takes, which was kind of a cool thing for a guy like that to say.
For sure.
Yeah.
And for a guy who had a bullpen stint with the Red Sox and didn't really love it, for him to now understand that whatever I need to do to win here again, that's a big kind of moment for him. And yeah, the Dodgers it's sick how good they are. It really is.
All right. Hey, Matt, I appreciate it. We got to go. It was so wonderful. I'm going to have you on again. Now that I have your number, I promise not to stalk you, but I will check in.
You got it.
Okay. Thanks. Take care. Good luck. And I'm glad it's all back. All right. Be well.
Thanks.
Bye.